So, thank you so much, Brittany, for coming on today. You took me up on my offer, and I appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I just recently joined the Women in Influencer Marketing Network. And so to be able to come and join the podcast with you, I'm really excited.
Me too. I'm excited to have you on. I saw you join. I mean, I reached out like as soon as you joined. I was like, oh wait, I really want to get you on for a variety of different reasons. I'm excited to sort of get to know you better. I'm excited to get to know your involvement in influencer marketing. A little. We were talking about our kids before we started recording this. So I'm excited to get into it. I have a few questions queued up, but I think before we dive into it, tell us in your own words, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about your history into influencer marketing.
Of course. So I'm really excited because today's March 4th. March 1st, so 5 years ago, I launched my blog, Be Bright Daily. And at the time, I launched that blog because I found myself in a very unique position. Graduated from college with my bachelor's in business. I was 3 months pregnant and I started my first post grad job at an influencer at an advertising agency at the time. So I found myself in a lot of life changing positions at one time. I was young, I was fresh out of college, I was a new mom, and I was in this industry that I had been working in years prior. And so there were a lot of changes coming at me at one time, and I wanted to establish a blog to create a voice for other women who may be in the same position as me, other Black women, other young moms, other young professional women. And so that's what led me to launch Be Bright Daily. As I started doing more with Be Bright Daily, doing more blogging, getting more into the influencer aspect of it, I wanted to mold together my love for blogging and that creativity along with what I was doing at my advertising agency, which was social media management. I wanted to mold those two worlds together. And since then, over the past 5 years, I've had the pleasure of launching the Influencer League, which is an online educational platform. So I'm full swing into this mom life. I'm full swing into my career, and I'm also full swing into my journey as a creator. And so it's been a full circle moment, and I'm just excited to be able to look back and see all that I've been able to accomplish in the last 5 years.
I mean, you've been able to accomplish so much. It sounds incredible what you're doing. I mean, I'm a little biased, of course, that I'm like, oh my God, you're in a community about education. I mean, that obviously piqued my interest. So I'm in a similar vein, but like a slightly different vantage point, right? Um, I want to hear what motivated you to start that? Like, what is really your business why?
So I started the Influencer League back in 2019 because during that time I was working for a PR agency running influencer campaigns. And we were doing campaigns all the way from strategy phase all the way down to analytics. I have a true love for analytics and data. And we were working with some of the largest retailers and manufacturers in the entire world. So these weren't small campaigns with small budgets. Like they were considerable budgets, influencers working with, 30 influencers a day. Like there was a lot going on. And the biggest thing that I saw when I was managing these campaigns when I first came in was that they were all white. And I was like, hold up. As an influencer myself, being a part of this community for a few years, I know there are some diverse creators. Like, where are the Black women? Where are the Asian women? Where are the Hispanic women? Like, where are we? Why are we not a part of these campaigns? And so I took it upon myself to diversify the campaigns that I was working on. But even in that sense, when I started diversifying these campaigns and Black women would join the campaign, and I'm handling the budget. I know how much we have to work with. I know how much money I have to give to a creator. And I would have a Black influencer who I'll send the deliverables over to, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll do that for $200. But then you have the white influencer who's like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that for 2,000." It's like, girl, we got 2,000 set aside for you. Why are you only charging me $200? And so that was the biggest thing that led me to creating the Influencer League, was because not a lot of creators knew what was going on the brand side. They didn't have that education. So they weren't negotiating their rates, they weren't setting their rates appropriately. They didn't know how to read contracts. They didn't know all the inner workings of the business of being an influencer. And that's what I wanted the Influencer League to come in and bridge that gap, educationally, so that we could teach all creators, but more specifically creators of color, what it's really like. And so that's my why, and that's why I'm still continuing to do the work today. Because now that we have TikTok, we have a whole new generation of creators who don't know. So the education is just as important today as it was, years ago when I created the Influencer League.
I mean, arguably even more important, right? Because
Mhm.
not only is there, maybe there were like 10 platforms before that were like really big, but now there's so many more. And the power of TikTok in particular, I mean, in a much shorter period of time, you can reach the amount of people that it just took you so much longer and still does, because other platforms are so oversaturated. So I love like I I love that your business why is so rooted in the foundation of like what you believe in. And it'll obviously be like your North Star as you continue to develop all of this great work. I'd love to ask you, like, how should one appropriately calculate their rates?
Yeah, so that's a huge question right now, that I get. And so here's what I'll say. Over the past 5 years of being in this industry, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of creators of varying sizes, backgrounds, niches, industries on different platforms. I've worked with them all. Literally, I've worked with so many. And it's been very helpful for me to be able to get this experience understanding how people charge and why they're charging what they charge, because then I can take all of that information, and being the data focused person that I am, create a formula based off all the information that I've seen. So what I did from that point was I created an influencer rate calculator. I built a formula. I didn't sleep for like 3 days straight trying to build this formula. So it was grueling work, but I created an influencer rate calculator that's pretty competitive, if I do say so myself. But the way we start off is rule of thumb. A lot of people say, oh, I'll start off with 4% of my overall following. Well, as we know, your followers aren't the only thing that determines what your rate is. And then, depending on the creator, if they have less than 10,000 followers or if they have more than 50,000 followers, 4% isn't even the accurate number. You'll have some people that'll say start at 10%, but once you add in exclusivity, usage, whitelisting, dark posting, quick turnaround fees, uh, ownership rights, once you start adding in all those other fees, it's likely that for a micro creator or a mid-tier creator, they'll come out of this campaign with possibly 15%, whereas you'll probably see a nano influencer with maybe 25% of their overall following as their rate. That's after you add in everything. So I still would go towards the 4 to 7% base on Instagram, and on TikTok you see more like 1 to 3% base. But then after you add in all those additionals, that percentage is gonna go up.
And there's so many variables. So thank you for even like indulging in this question. Like, I know, like, obviously, like, I'm like, all right, so like, how do you price out? You're like, are you seriously asking me this question?
No, it's okay. Like we teach our influencers there's easily at least 12 different things that you need to consider in your rate. And those 12 things are, you have your base. So, like if they want a base, a static post or a reel, but then you also have usage in terms of paid media. So, you have amplification, whitelisting, dark posting. You have usage for web, email, any type of marketing collateral. You have exclusivity, you have basic content creation fees. So if they want you to, just snap a picture and send it over to them, that's content creation. You have late fees, you have quick turn fees, you have revision fees, uh, so many fees. I don't know if I said all 12, but there's a lot to consider that goes into that rate for sure. And we try to look at it with our formula, we try to look at it from a percentage standpoint based on what most creators are charging right now in comparison to the type of budgets that we've worked with in the past. But then there are other things that you can't put a percentage on. You can't put a percentage on a content creation fee. There's no way to gauge how much someone's going to charge for, a video if they don't have to post it. Like there's no formula for that. So, trying to standardize it as much as possible, and where we can't standardize, we educate.
Ooh, I like that. I like that way of describing it.
Mhm.
That's perfect. I mean, it's all you can do, right? You
Right.
is prepare and arm them with as much information as humanly possible. But there are just variables also
Yeah.
that you can't predict. Like for example, right? Like let's say you're an influencer who is just like it's a busy season, and so maybe like during your busiest season, like if you're in the parenting space and it's back to school, like you might charge a lot more for a post during that period of time for many reasons. Why? One is because like that's your season and that's when people are going to have eyes on your content more, and also you're not like really hungry for work as much. You probably have a lot of stuff on your plate already, so there are so many things that vary. I think like the biggest thing that I see, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, is when it comes to pricing, like it's also important to track the data of your own negotiations because your work is worth as much as people will pay you, in my
Exactly.
opinion. And so if you're negotiating, sort of like a broad range of price, you're like, I think like my Instagram post during like a normal season would cost maybe between this and that, like test it. And then like for the next person who inquires, push it to the higher end and see what response you get, and then track the response. So then the next one you're like, okay, interesting, so I charge this and they push back to that, or they gave me even more, and then that just gives you so much more information. What are your thoughts on just like approaching it in a more analytical sense?
Well, we absolutely teach our creators about high ends and low ends when it comes to negotiating. Because first of all, you don't want to price yourself. You don't want to leave money on the table, but you also don't want to price yourselves out because you're not fully aware in the beginning stages of what the budgets are that a brand has to work with. But we make negotiating and educating about negotiating a key factor through the Influencer League, because one thing that we learned from our pay gap study that the Influencer League did in partnership with MSL, the study that showed that there's a 35% pay gap between black and white influencers and a 29% pay gap between POC and white influencers. What we learned from that study is that the negotiation skills are a key deficit. There's an industry wide lack of pay transparency, as we all know, but the negotiation skills were the key differentiator between the financial success between a black influencer and a white influencer. So, for example, those who took the survey who met the criteria for a successful negotiator earned 2.5 times more annual income than those who categorize themselves as an unsuccessful negotiator. So only 30% of the black influencers versus 45% of the white influencers met the criteria as a successful negotiator. And that can come down to a number of factors when we talk about race, but it all boils down to, if you don't know how to negotiate, you're automatically going to make less annual income than someone who does.
That's awesome. I mean, awesome to know about because the only way to
Mhm.
change things is knowledge and power. Obviously, not awesome for those people who don't know how to negotiate, but like you can learn that. That is a learned
You can
skill.
learn
Very
that.
You can
Exactly.
absolutely learn that. And so, and isn't it though important probably for like, you know, our industry is very female dominated, but I don't
Right.
want to exclude men either. But like, so the people who are influencers negotiating, it's probably twofold. It's learning how to negotiate and also probably how to enjoy it to a certain extent. Because I even think that the act of negotiating for some people can probably have like a negative connotation, whether it's like uncomfortable or
It's
like
scary. Yeah.
scary.
It's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
scary.
Yeah.
Because you have
Mhm.
like, to that point, I don't mean to cut you off, but, like, to that point, it's scary, and someone made this point on Twitter the other day, a Black woman made this point, when we're in these rooms and we're negotiating and we're throwing out these big numbers, historically, our community, the people who look like us, have never been in this type of position, so we don't get taught, it's not passed down to us to be confident to say, "Oh, I'm gonna charge $10,000 for a photo." Like, this is all new to us. This has never existed before. Generally in any other industry, we're also underpaid, but also as women, just even boil down to our gender, typically being a stay-at-home mom, typically being the people on the job who get paid less. We're not taught that confidence to go in and say, I know what I'm worth. This is what I'm going to ask for. This is what I'm going to stick by. And I'm also going to know how to hold my own and negotiate. Like, we're not, that type of confidence is not instilled in us. The audacity is not given to us. Like, we don't have that room. So, yes, it can be very scary. And hoping that the confidence comes through that education as well. Like, the more we can teach you how to be a successful negotiator, the more confident you're going to feel when it comes to negotiating.
That's so good. I feel that. Because I think that can be relatable to anybody, right? Like
Right.
I'm experiencing that now as like a business owner. And the way that I relate to it is, I want to grow my business. I don't have a degree in business. I didn't necessarily learn business skills and I'm 35 years old. So I'm like, oh, I'm not like a spring chicken anymore. And, there are just people who are like buying and selling businesses and like, doing an incredible job at that. And like they know these terms and these methods that like I don't. And so there's like a block there because I feel intimidated to even like push myself to do it. There's some sort of block. There are things that us as humans have not learned yet. Like there are wonderful people like you who are just like out there to try to help, to educate, and it's all possible, so much of it is like a mindset thing. It's like if you want it bad enough and like you go out there and you get the education, you can, it is all possible. I would love to know more specifically, how do you think progress is going on improving the influencer pay gap?
That's a good question. I think I definitely feel like it's too early to call, to be completely honest. You have a lot of brands in the summer of 2020 that made a lot of commitments that they didn't fall they didn't come through on, they fell short. You have a lot of brands who are trying their best to implement the diversity. They're trying their best to, do the right thing, but still not doing the right thing because they don't have the teams in place, to be completely honest. Like, you want the diversity, you want to show that you're trying to make a difference, but you still fall short because you're not taking the time out to build your internal systems, to build your internal team, and put people at the table who are going to help you understand what's the right and wrong way to do something. And so I think it's still too early to call how the industry is able to tackle this pay gap, because even more so now than before, I'm seeing brands and people online say the influencer prices are rising. Like, what's the value? Why are we even working with them anymore? Like, what are we getting out of it? The only way we're going to close the Black and POC influencer pay gap is if we charge more. So, as a result, you're going to see us at least ask for more money than maybe a white influencer or a male influencer. So, if you're going to continue to complain about it, I don't see where that progress is coming in at. But ask me again a year from now, and my answer might be different, or I hope, because TikTok, the Forbes list came out in December. It showed that it showed the list of the highest paid TikTokers. None of them were black, but the second highest followed TikToker is a black man. How did he end up on the list? So
Yeah.
not seeing the changes like we want to yet. Maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now. I know that me and a bunch of other women and people in this industry are really leading the charge and doing our best to try to change that narrative.
And it's super commendable what you're doing. I agree. I hope that we have another conversation just like this in a year. And
Yeah.
there's a very different answer. I hope. I hope. I think that a lot of us do hope that. So I think it's being mindful of it. It's like continuing to listen. It's continuing to ask questions. It's continuing to like just push ourselves out of our comfort zones, and from just what maybe some people are used to or have ideas about or whatever it is, like to just keep an open mind, and like listen. I think that's like a really big thing that I personally want to see more people doing. And like, so you were just mentioning, and this was a question that I wanted to ask you, so it's perfect segue. You were talking about like some people saying that like, well, these influencer rates are too high. Like, how do I justify, these rates? I would love to dig into that a little bit more because in the WIIM community, there's been a little bit of chatter around that recently, just about influencer rates getting too high and marketers struggling with justifying those rates. Is there any education that you have given influencers or just anything that you would impart on them now in terms of being able to like justify and quantify the results of their work?
Absolutely. So, I generally reserve this for influencers who are in the higher tiers or who have been in the industry a little bit longer. So, I'm not I'm not eliminating or ignoring a creator with 5,000 followers because they have value as well. But just for this example, this particular influencer has like 200,000 followers, or influencers in one of our programs. So, I say all that to say, from an education standpoint, we teach analytics and data. When you do a campaign, brands aren't the only ones that should be doing campaign recap reports. Like brands shouldn't be the only ones saying, "Okay, here's all how all of our influencers performed. Here was the return on investment. Here's the benchmarks that we met. Here are the KPIs that we, kept an eye on." Influencers should be doing the same thing on their end, and we teach them how to do that. We teach them how to look for those numbers and calculate their own return on investment. We actually have a return on investment calculator that calculates overall engagement. It calculates reach. It calculates click through rates. So if your campaign is for, like conversions or sales, it calculates that. We teach them all of those things because it shows how valuable the influencer truly was to this campaign. For example, we had one influencer who has a couple 100,000 followers who did a campaign with a large retailer. The frequency of that campaign is typically 1 to 2. This influencer, her frequency was 9. That means people were 9 times more likely to see her post again. Like they kept coming back to it, kept coming back to it, kept coming, like voluntarily, organically coming back to her post. That's the value of a creator for a campaign that is focused on awareness, reach, and impressions. So we teach our creators those types of things so they can take all of that information, put it into words that the typical brand manager can understand or their client can understand, and show the true value of why influencers are as important in this industry these days as they are. You know, like you a Facebook ad is not going to give you a frequency of 9. It's not going to happen. Like you would have to bombard your audience with ads over and over and over again to get a frequency that high, and you would spend a lot of money trying to do that. Whereas this influencer just did it very organically.
And that's awesome, like, just learning the lingo, like, learning the jargon, like,
Mhm.
as women in particular, we can be really good at, like, having this, like, instinctual feeling that, like, our gut tells us when things are going right or going wrong or whatever it is, right? But, like, in order to sort of like up level our work to the next level, it's imperative to learn how to also articulate the why and the numbers and the statistics and learn how to read the analytics on the back end of the platform and all of that stuff. And I can also speak from, a marketer's perspective. I hear in the group all the time, like some of the best influencers that people love working with are those who understand that they can, like, because you speak to each other better. And and they're like, oh, like, this person comes off now so professional, and like they're treating their own business as a business, and like that's just how it comes across. And so, like, I want to, the thing is, like, there could be two accounts, right? Same platform, two different influencers, and they're both creating incredible content with perhaps the same impact as each other, but one of them doesn't, like, necessarily know how to articulate the power
Mhm.
that they have in terms of, like, an analytical, like, and statistical sense, and the other one just sort of, like, it comes out freely. And, like, because and so that woman who can, articulate all of that, like, they're just inevitably going to be perceived, for right or for wrong, as, like, the more business savvy, business minded, and perhaps even, like, monetizable and
Mhm.
profitable and successful and, like, influencer. And again, like, under the hood, they might have the same amount of impact going on. Perhaps even the other
Even
influencer is doing more than the other
more.
one,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
wild, you
You
know?
have to, you have to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. Like if you can't do both, that's how you have influencers out there with, 500,000 followers who are not even touching a fraction of the income that an influencer with 20,000 followers is bringing in because they don't know. It's that lack of education, that lack of business savvy that's keeping them from truly getting the bag. If you can make a client who's all about numbers, if you can make them feel comfortable, you can get more money. Like that rings true for us who are on the brand side, with our client every single day, doing the campaign recap reports and putting it into terms. Like we're trying to win more business. We're trying to get them to, do another campaign with us. Same thing goes for the influencer. You got to do the same thing. And that's what I'm able to teach them. I'm also on the brand and agency side dealing with the same things with my client. I have to be able to understand the analytics and data. I have to be able to put it in terms to where my grandmother can understand. Like if I can explain it to where my grandma can understand, then I know I did a really good job teaching it. I did a really good job making my client feel comfortable.
So I was gonna ask you, kind of like similar to that, like, where does your knack and, like, passion for education come from?
I don't know. Like I think I feel like I'm just like a natural born leader, I will say. It's been that way as long as I can remember. I was cheer captain in high school. I was student body president. None of that matters today. Uh, like nobody cares today, but that's just how I always have been. But also, um, I'm just to be completely honest, like I'm a black woman. Like when people look at us or the way we're treated in society, like we're the bottom of the totem pole. Nobody, we get the scraps. We get everyone's scraps. Like no one gives us the opportunities that we deserve. No one gives us, the the due diligence that we deserve. Like, we're powerful women, and no one looks at us that way, but expects us to come in and save the day. Even right now, I'm not a political person, but they're questioning, the president's nominee for Supreme Court justice. Like, what's her LSAT score? You've never asked that question ever before, but now when it's a black woman being nominated, you're going to ask where her score is. Make it make sense. And so that's where I think that passion of education comes in at, because we don't we don't get the same opportunities. We don't get the same, passion and resources put into us that we deserve. And I want to be that person that I needed when I was growing up, especially in this space that didn't exist. You know, social media didn't exist like that. I was born in 93. I'm 29 now, and I'm right on that cusp of, we had a childhood without really any, social media or cell phones. And then it started popping up, and, like middle high school, social media came around in high school, um, other than MySpace. But I want to be that person to, empower the next generation. And then last but not least, when I look at other women creators in this industry, I see how much money they're bringing in. Can't name too many other careers where you see black women earning that much money, or women in general earning that much money from home with children. So it's like, how can I be that person to make sure more women get to do this, get to have this opportunity?
I'm someone who really believes in the power of language, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Like,
Okay.
it kills me to hear you say, like, nobody looks at Black women, or I don't know if you said women or people, as being, as expecting us to succeed, or, I heard you say, like, giving us the scraps, things like that.
Mhm.
As someone who has a daughter, right?
Mhm.
Like, I would never wanna hear her say that. I would wanna switch it up. And it's an
Yeah.
in but, like, I would wanna say, like, the use like, speak it into existence almost, you know? And so I
Yeah.
have a question for you. It's like, there's a fine line between, like, just being honest about what you see and what you experience, but also maybe perhaps speaking things into existence. Like, what are your thoughts on how to toe that line?
I am a huge manifester. Like, if I want something, I don't say I want it. I say I'm going to get it. It's mine. It's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. And that's the line. Being a black woman, going your whole life, or even just your, women before you, your mom, your grandma, your aunt, your sisters, women in your community, whether you experience, influences that, rised above expectations or what we were given, or didn't, however you experienced it, that line is changing the narrative, changing the way you speak and breathe life into it and manifest. Just because you haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it's not possible. So instead of saying, I can't do this, or I don't, I am not sure if this is going to happen, or I'm not sure if it's for me, say it's for you. Remind yourself, what's for you is for you. Nobody else can come in and take that away from you. And truly believe that you deserve the same amount of respect, the same amount of opportunities, the same amount of recognition as, your counterparts, other women, even men, believe that that's for you. And so you're right, there is power in the words, and regardless of what we've experienced in life, I manifest everything. And there has yet to be something in my life that I want that I have not gotten because I told myself I was going to get it.
Look, everybody has their own experience in life. My personal experience is I happen to grow up with a lot of really powerful, inspirational Black women. Like, one of my favorite professors in college, and we keep in touch to this day, was a Black woman. And I don't know, I grew up in musical theater, and like the Black girls sang, like I wish I could sing. Why? Because a lot of them grew up in church, and I was envious. I was like, I cannot even begin to have a voice like that. That's incredible. If I want something, like I'll be like, I will absolutely get it. Like the conviction, the tenacity, like that is there. And like that is something that inspires me and that I've seen and I love about like a lot of the Black women that I've just known. Like use what you've got. Like if that's what it is, like just know that some people might not have that. Right? Like we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses. And just to say that like whatever might feel like, you're like maybe that's like that's all you've got, right? You're like, well, I just have my tenacity. Like that might be way more than other people have as well, and it's not a competition, of course, but my hope is that it empowers somebody that's listening. I would love to end this conversation with this last question, because I think that you have this incredible unique perspective, both from the brand and agency and marketer side, and also from the creator side as well, because you work with so many creators hand in hand. I want to know from your opinion, how can brands and influencers work better together?
Easiest answer, transparency. Try to be as transparent as possible, but also work to create mutually beneficial relationships. Like, I understand that when you hire a creator, you're paying them to do a job. So right now it's very transactional, and it should stay transactional. Like if you reach out to me to do a campaign, I'm going to expect money in return for my services. That's just that. It's transactional. But I want brands and influencers to work together to make this relationship mutually beneficial, be transparent, be open, and be willing to build true relationships. Because creators see it all the time, and I hope brands see it too. But when you work with a brand enough, outside of already having that established brand affinity, you notice the content performs better. You notice that your audience resonates with it better. They engage with it more. They've had time to get to know the brand through your content. Like psychologically, it takes a customer 7 times to see a product before they decide to buy it. It's no different than influencer marketing. Why are you not working to strengthen those relationships between the brand and influencer? So that transparency and building those relationships are like top 2 things that I want to see more of in the future.
Love that. I love that so much. I think that that's awesome. I would like to see that as well. And maybe it is easier than we all think. Maybe we're all overthinking it. Like it's all possible, right? Like maybe it'll just
Right. I think most people overthink things, I'll be honest. I think a lot of people, for sure, I know creators overthink things. They'll come to me and they're like, "Hey, what's the best way for me to word this email?" And I'm like, "Just say it." Like, you don't have to use any fancy words to try to just say, in the most concise, clear way, what it is that you need. Like, "How do I decline a partnership? What fancy words?" You don't need any fancy words to decline a partnership. Just say, I'm not, I don't have the capacity to take on this campaign right now. Like, just keep it short and simple. Like, they overthink things so much. And I just, like, let's work towards building genuine relationships between brands and influencers.
100,000%. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Again, like, thank you for taking me up on my invitation to come on today. I just wanted to like get to know you better, hear your
Thank
thoughts,
you for
and
having me.
thank you. I think that some people listening might be like, "Ooh, I like this Brittany. I want to get in touch with her and
I hope
learn
so.
more." Right? So we're gonna drop your handles and everything in the description box so people can learn more about you. And I'm excited to see you more around WIIM. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. I look forward to having more conversations like this with you in the future. And for anyone listening, first of all, thank you for listening. Definitely hit me up through social or email if you ever just want to have a quick coffee chat, or if there's anything you need from me or the Influencer League. Definitely let me know. We would be very happy to work with you all. So thank y'all.